Okay, so I want you to just picture this scene for a second.
Right.
It feels like the opening sequence of a gritty crime thriller. But this is real life. It's June 2023. We're in a suburb of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, at this popular restaurant called The Social.
And the social is pretty much what it sounds like. It's, casual. It's got that Tuesday night energy. You've got these big TVs on the walls showing soccer matches, waiters running around with fried noodles, chicken wings.
Totally normal.
Completely normal, loud, humid, just life.
Except at one table, tucked away in the back.
Right. At this table, the vibe is, well, it's different.
You've got two men. On one side, there's Tai Boon Wee. He's a legitimate businessman, founder of a rubber products maker called GIB Holdings.
And across from him, a guy named Andy Lim. Now, Lim is a newer shareholder in Tai's company, but this is not your typical shareholder meeting.
Right. Those usually happen in boardrooms with, PowerPoints and bad coffee.
Exactly. Not over chicken wings with the Premier League blasting in the background. And this is where the whole scene just shifts from business dinner to something much, much darker.
Okay.
The conversation gets heated, and then Andy Lim just leans back in his chair, lifts up his shirt, and shows him a pistol, tucked right into his trousers.
Whoa!
And he looks Tai dead in the eye and tells him in the middle of this crowded restaurant that he is lucky he hasn't been shot dead yet.
That is absolutely terrifying.
And then comes the demand. Lim says he wants 2 seats on the board of GIB Holdings, and he isn't asking. He's telling him.
Okay, so it's a classic shakedown. I mean, my brain immediately goes to one place. The mob, the mafia, triads. You assume this Andy Lim guy is muscle for some crime syndicate.
Of course, you think it's organized crime. But here is the massive twist, the thing we're unpacking today. The allegation, and this is from a huge Bloomberg Big Take investigation, is that the muscle behind the gunman isn't a crime syndicate.
It's not.
No. The power allegedly backing him is the MACC, the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission.
Wait, the Anti-Corruption Commission?
The very government agency that was created to fight graft. The people who are supposed to be the good guys.
That's an incredible premise. So you're telling me the corruption watchdog is the one holding the leash for the guys with the guns?
That is exactly what this investigation alleges. Today, we are diving deep into this report that claims the country's top anti-graft agency has essentially gone rogue. We're talking about collusion with a so-called corporate mafia to help private businessmen seize control of public companies.
This sounds like a movie script. I mean, we've got mock Tudor mansions, a literal menu of services for corruption, and a trail that apparently leads right up to the Prime Minister's office.
It does. And the mission for this deep dive is to really ask a fundamental and honestly a terrifying question. In a modern economy, who polices the police?
So let's start with the players. The source uses this phrase, corporate mafia. That's a heavy term. Are we talking about a structured thing, a Don Corleone figure?
Not really. It's less the Godfather and more of a, let's call it a gig economy for corporate raiders.
A gig economy for crime? That's a new one on me.
The term corporate mafia actually came from a Malay language blog, but it's stuck because the tactics are just so brutal. But in terms of structure, it's described as a loose network. Maybe half a dozen independent businessmen, mostly ethnic Chinese, who operate kind of like freelancers.
So they don't all answer to one boss?
No, they run their own operations, but they'll team up when an opportunity presents itself. It's opportunistic. They hunt in a pack when a target looks weak, but they're not a standing army.
A joint venture of predation. So how do they do it? Because a hostile takeover is usually boring, right? It's paperwork, proxy battles, not pistols at dinner.
Well, that's where the playbook comes in. And this is what makes the report so damning, the consistency. They identified this 4-step modus operandi that gets used over and over.
Okay, walk us through it. What's step 1?
Step 1 is the entry. One or more of these guys buys a stake in a company. And they aren't going after the huge conglomerates. They're targeting penny stocks, maybe some mid-sized firms.
Why them specifically?
Well, they're listed, so there's value there. But they might not have the political connections to fight back effectively. They're big enough to be worth something, but small enough to be bullied.
Okay, so they get their foot in the door. They buy some stock. What's next? Step 2.
Step 2 is the trigger. They lodge a formal complaint against the company's founders. But, and this is the really critical part, they don't go to the police. They don't go to the Securities Commission. They go straight to the MACC.
Because that's where they allegedly have their inside track.
Exactly. They pull a lever and the whole steep machinery turns on. Which brings us to step 3. the squeeze. The MACC launches this huge investigation. But it's not a quiet audit. This is shock and awe. They freeze the company's bank accounts, they arrest executives, they detain board members.
Which just paralyzes the entire business.
Totally. I mean, imagine you're a CEO. One day you can pay your staff and your suppliers. The next day you can't. You can't even access your own money to hire a lawyer or pay your mortgage. And all the while, the news is out and your stock price is tanking.
You're bleeding out.
You are. And while the founders are in this total state of panic, facing jail time, financial ruin, that's when we hit step 4, the takeover.
The final move.
The businessmen step back in, and they offer a solution. They say, look, we can make all of this go away, just resign. Or, even better, sell us your shares.
At a massive discount, I'm guessing.
Oh, for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Knockdown prices is the term they use. They basically say, sell to us, and this whole investigation will just disappear.
It's weaponized bureaucracy, using the power of the state to force a private sale.
That's it, exactly.
Is there a specific case that really shows this in action? Because the squeeze sounds abstract until you hear a real story.
There is. The case of a cargo airline called MJet's Air. This might be the most blatant example in the whole report. The founders were 2 men, Gudasakar and Fang.
Okay.
They get targeted. Step 1, step 2 happen. Then comes step 3.
Yeah.
The MSCC raids their homes. They're arrested. So far, standard intimidation.
Scary, but I guess technically part of the process if you're being investigated.
Sure. But then they get hauled into MACC headquarters for interrogation. Now just picture this. You're in a federal interrogation room. Cinder block walls, bad lighting. You're expecting a detective to walk in with a notepad.
Right. Where were you on the night of the 12th? All that.
Instead, the door opens.
Yeah.
And it's not just an officer. There's an executive from a rival company, a firm called MMEG, waiting for them inside the room.
Wait, inside the MACC building? Inside the actual interrogation room?
Inside the room.
Hmm.
And he's not there to observe, he's there to negotiate. He starts shouting at them right there, demanding they sell their stake in the airline to his company.
That is, the line between the state and private interests just dissolves at that point. The interrogation room is just a boardroom with a lock on it.
It suggests the agency's assets, its buildings, its officers, its authority had been essentially privatized, rented out.
But how do you even arrange something like that? You can't just call up the FBI and say, hey, can I rent interrogation room B for a business meeting? Who's making this happen?
Well, this brings us to a specific unit inside the MACC called Section D.
Section D sounds like something out of a spy novel.
It really does. It's the unit in the investigation division responsible for listed companies and market corruption. So exactly these kinds of targets. According to MACC officers who spoke to Bloomberg, Section D was basically running a menu of services.
A menu, like an a la carte list. All have the soup and a side of extortion.
Disturbingly close, yeah. The sources allege you could buy different tiers of harassment, and the prices went into the millions of ringgit. A basic package might get you some intimidation, a raid or two to scare the shareholders.
And if you really wanted to crush someone,
then you go for the premium package. We're talking actual arrests, holding suspects for long periods on remand to maximize the pressure, and even recommending charges to the public prosecutor to make it all stick.
That's pay-to-play law enforcement. It's so transactional, it's chilling.
It is. And the culture inside the agency seems to reflect that cynicism. There's this one detail in the report about the lower-level officers, the guys guarding the detained executives.
The grunts on the ground.
Right. While these founders are sitting there watching their lives fall apart, the officers guarding them are reportedly just completely checked out. They're scrolling on TikTok, they're vaping in the interrogation room. Some are even just sleeping.
Just another Tuesday at the office for them.
Exactly. Some officers apparently even apologized to the victims. They'd whisper that they were just following orders and tell them to look at what happened to other companies, like a firm called Revenue Group, just so they'd know how the story ends.
Wow. Spoiler alert, you lose. That casual attitude is almost more disturbing than the malice. It implies this is just normal. It's systemic.
It really does.
So we know the playbook, we know the enforcers. Let's talk about the generals. Who are the people ordering off this menu?
The report really zooms in on 2 main figures who illustrate this whole system. The first is a man named Victor Chin.
Victor Chin. What's his story?
He's a fascinating character. He denies being ringleader, of course, but his lifestyle just screams power. He lives in this mock Tudor mansion in a gated community.
A Tudor mansion in tropical Malaysia. That's a statement.
It is. He's got full-time chefs, a wine cellar, and get this, A room in his house set up for about 15 financial traders.
He has a private trading floor in his
He
house.
does, and a fleet of luxury cars, including a bulletproof SUV. But here's where the leverage comes from. Chin was linked to this massive money laundering investigation by the tax agency. We're talking about roughly $127 million.
$127 million.
$127 million. That is a very big problem to have.
A huge problem. And he needed it to go away. So the allegation is he turned to the second key player, Andy Lim.
Our guy with the gun from the restaurant.
The very same. Andy Lim is described in internal MACC memos as a close friend of the MACC leadership. He's the fixer, the guy who takes officers to karaoke bars, helps them out financially. He's the bridge between that gray market world and the official world. So the dynamic is, Chin has the money and the legal problem. Lim has the connections to make the problem go away.
Precisely. Lim allegedly brokered a settlement with the MACC for Chin. And in return, Chin helped finance Lim's entry into the corporate world, helping him buy into companies like Green Packet and, of course, GIB.
Which is what leads him to be sitting at that dinner table waving a pistol around demanding board seats. It all connects.
It's a symbiotic relationship. But for Lim to have that kind of influence, just walk into the MACC and fix a $100 million money laundering case, you need support from the very, very top. You need the chief commissioner.
Azam Baki.
Azam Baki. He's a career officer who rose all the way through the ranks to become the top graft buster in Malaysia. But his time at the top has been, let's just say, controversial.
I remember a share trading scandal a few years ago involving him.
You do. In 2021-2022, it came out that Azam owned a huge number of shares in a company called Gets Global. And this was a problem for two big reasons. First, public officials have really strict limits on share ownership to prevent conflicts of interest.
Makes sense. You don't want the referee betting on the game.
Exactly. But second, and this is the real kicker, Andy Lim, our fixer, was also a major shareholder in Gets Global at the exact same time.
Okay, so they're not just friends. They're financially intertwined in the same stock.
Azam's initial explanation was that his brother used his trading account, which, by the way, is a potential violation of securities laws itself. It was eventually cleared by the Securities Commission. But that optical link to Lim never went away.
And the Bloomberg report connects them even more directly over the restaurant incident, right? The gun incident.
This is the smoking gun of the whole report, if you'll forgive the pun. After Andy Lim flashed that pistol at the social, the regular police, not the MACC, but the Royal Malaysia Police, they actually did their job.
They arrested him.
They arrested him, confiscated the weapon. I mean, it's an open and shut case. Malaysia has incredibly strict gun laws. You cannot just wave a gun around.
Right.
But then a phone call was allegedly made to federal police headquarters. And the source says that call came directly from Azam Baki.
The head of the Anti-Corruption Commission is intervening in a violent crime case.
Allegedly. And the request was simple. Give Lim his gun back and drop the case.
Did they do it?
They did. Lim got his gun back. No further action was taken.
Wow. That sends a pretty clear message to everyone, doesn't it? If you can pull a gun in a restaurant and have the top anti-graft cop in the country bail you out, then you're untouchable.
It creates a culture of total impunity. If the law doesn't apply to you, you are the law.
Which forces us to look at the political context here, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. Malaysia is a major economy, and the current Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, came into power on this huge anti-corruption platform.
Reformasi. Reform.
His whole brand was fighting corruption. He was the answer to the massive 1MDB scandal. In fact, didn't Anwar protest against Azam Baki himself before he became Prime Minister?
He did. That's the great paradox here. Before he was in power, there were rallies. Anwar was holding placards that mocked Azam. People were calling it the Republic of Azam. The expectation was that the second Anwar took office, Azam would be gone. Day one stuff.
So why is he still there? Why would you extend the contract of the very person you accused of being corrupt?
That is the million-dollar question. And the consensus from critics cited in the report is that the MACC is just too useful a political tool to dismantle.
Useful in what way?
Well, if you're the prime minister, having an agency that can, at your direction, freeze the bank accounts of your political enemies, that's an incredibly powerful weapon. It's a nuclear option in your back pocket.
So the political will to reform the agency just sort of disappears because it's more useful to the person in power as it is?
Exactly. It's a systemic flaw. In Malaysia, the head of the MACC is appointed on the advice of the prime minister. He doesn't answer to parliament, he answers to the PM. So if the PM wants to keep that weapon on the table, he keeps his chief close. And the agency goes from being a watchdog to a lapdog. or in this case, an attack dog.
And we have to remind ourselves, this isn't just about white-collar crimes. This isn't just stock prices. The MACC has a really dark history when it comes to the physical safety of people in its custody.
You can't talk about the MECC without mentioning Teo Beng Hak.
Teo Beng Ha.
In 2009, he was a young political aide. He was taken in for questioning by the MACC in the evening. The next morning, he was found dead on the roof of the floor below.
What happened?
He had fallen from a window of the MACC building. The case sparked this massive public outrage, but no officer was ever convicted of killing him.
And he wasn't the only one, was he?
No. There was a customs official found dead on an MACC badminton court. Also a fall. So when we talk about intimidation, when these businessmen are threatened or dragged into interrogation rooms, the fear is real. It's not just, I might lose my company. It's, I might not walk out of this building alive.
That puts the officers vaping on TikTok in a whole new chilling light. The threat of violence is always just there, in the air.
Absolutely.
So what is the fallout for the business owners who get caught in this net?
Utter devastation. The source material is just heartbreaking. These are people who lose companies they built from nothing. They face financial ruin. Many of them suffer from severe depression.
I can only imagine.
One of the executives is quoted in the report, and he says, I've lost faith in the system. If you have money, you have connections, you can just fix up anybody.
That's such a damning thing for an emerging economy to hear. If you're an international investor looking at Malaysia, you hear that and you run the other way.
It leads to brain drain and investor flight. I mean, why would you build a successful company there if you know that success just paints a target on your back? If you know some guy with a badge and a gun can just come and take it all away.
It kills innovation.
It kills trust. And without trust, markets just don't function.
The report quotes Tommy Thomas, who's the former Attorney General of Malaysia, and I thought his analogy was perfect.
Yes, he compared the MACC to the Roman Praetorian Guard.
Let's unpack that. The Praetorian Guard.
In ancient Rome, they were the elite soldiers, the bodyguards created to protect the emperor. But over time, they realized they were the ones with all the swords. They became so powerful that they started deciding who got to be emperor.
Right. If they didn't like the guy in charge, they just removed him, assassinated him.
Exactly. They became the power behind the throne. And Thomas's warning is that the MACC has become a power unto itself. It was made to protect the state from corruption, but it's become so powerful that it operates outside the law, potentially controlling the very political masters it's supposed to serve.
Which brings us right back to the question we started with.
Who polices the police? It's the oldest question in governance. Quis custodiet ipsos custodes? Who watches the watchman?
In a system where the watchdog answers only to the most powerful politician, and that watchdog is allegedly moonlighting for corporate raiders, the entire loop of accountability is just, it's broken.
It is. And until there's a real structural change-making, the agency answerable to Parliament, ensuring genuine independence, cutting that direct link to the Prime Minister, it's very hard to see how the story changes.
It's a sobering reality check. You know, we think of corruption as just money under the table, a bribe for a permit or something. But this is different. This is the entire institution of justice being used as a weapon to steal in broad daylight.
It's institutional capture. And once an institution is captured like that, it is incredibly difficult to set it free.
Well, that is a lot to process. It's a story of guns, money, and power. But at the end of the day, it's really a story about the fragility of trust. And that's where we'll leave this deep dive. Something to think about. If the people watching the door are the ones letting the burglars in, who exactly are you supposed to call? Thanks for listening.